Here in the Northern Rockies, dark winter months are outlasted in basements, dens, and nooks, where kindred souls gather to share intel, swap fly patterns, and relive the memories from seasons past. This gathering spot, known locally as a February room, is the inspiration for this podcast. No matter the season, the door is always open to those with a fly fishing story to tell. Brought to you by CD Fishing USA, the North American distributor for Composite Development's fly rods and fishing accessories. Tech, precision, ingenuity, legacy. Go to cdfishing.us and follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Here's your host, Lauren Carnop, and this is the February Room.
Welcome to the February Room. Today, my guest is James Lady, all the way from Michigan. Thank you so much for joining me today, James.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
And I have to say, you have a great title. You're an artist with Stillwater Studio, doing beautiful photography, fishing. But one of the other things that's really interesting about you is that you are the founder or hobbyist of Michigan Aboriginal Project. And when somebody says Aboriginal, maybe they don't know what that means. Can you give us a little bit description of what you do? And then I want to hear a fishing story. You might have a story that goes with it.
I may. I always wondered if this Bigfoot thing out there, was real. I never could figure out why it couldn't be real. And if I ever had an opportunity to see one, I'd really like to do that and get a picture of it. And I never knew that some boyhood dreams could be realized in the way that they have. That's how I got into that, and it does tie into my fly fishing. Although formerly an artist, formerly a fly fisher, I really haven't grabbed a fly rod to seriously go after fish for a long time. I was supposed to go up to Canada this year, but the COVID situation hit, and I love fly fishing for pike. It's one of my absolute favorite things to do. So I got my jollies through the fishing and the art, and then I kind of burned out on all that. Then I just went on this Bigfoot thing. It was actually during the last presidential election. I thought the world had gone mad. And no matter what side of the aisle you hail from, you would agree that the world's gone mad. So I wanted nothing to do with it, being, a recovering political junkie. So I went to the woods, and I was planning a camping and fishing trip up to the Boundary Waters in Minnesota. And I had ignored a video that kept coming up in the feed until after my research, and found everything I wanted to, all the portages and the lakes and all that. And it was just wonderful. But I finally clicked on that Bigfoot video, and I went down that rabbit hole. There's no other way to explain it. I went down in deep because I was fascinated. What I'd learned that by my own wits and reckoning, by the available multitude of experience and evidence as expressed and shared by others, it was real. So I learned from others where to look, what to do, what not to do. And I always, above all that, trusted my instincts. This Wednesday will be October 21st, and it will be the 1-year anniversary since my last encounter. Yeah, it turns out to be with multiple subjects, and I didn't know that until I had actually cleaned up the audio recording some weeks later. But that was something that was amazing. And I'm in the middle of the woods. It's raining. I'm the only one out there in this valley, and I hear this chi-chi-chu-ha, really loud. And it was like this world-class tenor. This voice was high fidelity, and it was like, oh my God. Lauren, I had never felt smaller in my life.
Oh my gosh.
And some really other crazy things that went on, vocalization wise. I know all this because I recorded all this. I've gotten into the recording Sasquatch vocals, and I've recorded some really amazing things. But one of the amazing things that I recorded was that encounter. So from a boyhood curiosity to adult, running to the woods to stay sane and to realize an encounter with these. There are people. They are a people. They speak. I've recorded things that would just absolutely blow your mind. So if anybody's curious about it, there's so many people out there I just can't talk about this with. It's not for everybody. And if I told you really what the expressions that I have captured, I would, without the audio evidence, I would fully expect you to commit me, because it's crazy. There are things that you out there in the woods that are so much greater than we. and maybe the actual original human inhabitants of this planet. I think they've been here a lot longer than we have.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of people out there that really believe that the world's a lot bigger. And especially when you kind of go out in the woods, you see this vast, endless of like forest and woods. So you know that there's got to be, there must be something more out there than just what we can see. But obviously, you've been able to hear it. And I know that you talked about that you might have had an experience being on the river with a Bigfoot encounter.
Yeah. Well, in the past, this is before I even was really passionate about this Bigfoot hunting kind of thing. It sounds so silly. It really does, and I have to laugh. This is not a subject you can bring up at your mother's country club, right? So it's shunned, and I feel like I'm the black sheep of the family. But I so want to share with them these great and wonderful things that I've experienced, but you just can't. So I thank you for this opportunity to. Fill my gut
Absolutely.
next to my fireplace in my own living room. So before I realized, Sasquatch behavior, they will throw things at you, and they're somewhat pranksters. They'll have fun with you. Maybe they like to see confused looks on our faces, but I've been out there fly fishing up a river up north. So I'd be up there fishing, and a couple times I heard these very distinct plops, like right at my hips, right into the water. And I was convinced that I had dropped something. It was that distinct. And Sasquatch sometimes will throw stones at you, or nuts, or pine cones. They'll do this for fun, I think. But they'll also do it to intimidate. Sasquatch can have fun, and they can also be aggressive if you're not very savvy to their ways and with respect to the woods and such. I think they don't like bad people.
So, do you have an experience with the first encounter with Bigfoot?
After I got into this hobby, my first encounter was simply a stare down. I went to it was, I don't know, about 9:30, quarter to 10, and I went to spit my toothpaste on the side of the camp. And I looked up, I had my headlamp on, it was red, and I see two massive eyes, big round eyes, wide spaced, just looking at me, and I just locked eyes with it. And we stared at one another for several minutes. I don't know how long. On the conservative side, I would say at least a few minutes. I have a video that I grabbed my camera, because we were staring at each other for a long time. It finally closed its right eye, so the one on the left by my perspective. And I think it perhaps was oversensitized by my light. I then decided that we could be doing this all night, and I nonchalantly went back and I grabbed my flashlight and my video camera, and I have nearly 9 minutes of video. So anyway, I do that, and I analyze that video 4 months later, found an anomaly in the background. It turns out to be a Sasquatch. You see an upright figure. It's on my channel, and it's called Juvie Captured, and it's an analysis of the footage, and I use an app called Coach My Video. It enables you to zoom in and magnify certain areas of video with great clarity, and I use that. And it wasn't until I discovered that app that I discovered that what this anomaly was in fact one of these creations. And you can see the head, you can see it turn its head, pivot its shoulders, you can see the ocular recess, you can see the contour of the back, including large shoulders. In the backside, the very large trapezius muscles, and it clearly turns, pivots, and gets out of the light. And you can see its butt and part of its legs. It's not the greatest. It's all fuzzy. That's how you know it's genuine, right? But it's there, and light doesn't lie. And in this one moment of this video, there was one in the background. And I do consider myself somewhat of a treasure hunter, especially now that I've gotten into collecting vocals and dialogue. You've heard some of that dialogue.
Yes.
It's
Yeah,
crazy, isn't it?
yeah, it definitely has a different ring to it. It doesn't necessarily sound anything I've ever heard before. And I think it's something that, have you ever sent any of your findings like to a zoologist?
I've looked around, and occasionally I do look and share my stuff. For example, the new doctor in that show on the Travel Channel, Dr. Maria Mayer, We had a dialogue going on Facebook Messenger for a little while. And she was very cordial and very kind. And then she just kind of disappeared. But I had shared with her some certain audio. Now, sometime after that, there a fellow by the name of Josh, I'll leave his name out. He's the supervising producer for that new series. It's called Expedition Bigfoot, I believe. But anyway, we've chatted back and forth. He actually inquired about licensing some of my audio for the show and maybe even being interviewed. But that never went anywhere. Not to say it won't, but
Yeah.
I might consider doing that for kicks and giggles.
Well, it sounds like you just have a real passion for the outdoors and everything that lives in it. So, what brought you your passion with fly fishing?
I've always loved to fish. I grew up with three sisters. And, I'd always run down to the woods, into the creek and look for crawdads and salamanders, whatever I could, do. Speaking of which, in the past couple of years, a Sasquatch structure has appeared in the creek I used to play in as a kid.
Like a structure, like what kind of structure?
They are known, and this is how I have been very fortunate in selecting good recording sites. They make structures like wigwams, teepees, lean-tos. They exhibit other behaviors in the woods, like snapping trees. Nobody fully understands why, but it's probably a directional thing, perhaps a way of communicating. So there were three of them in the creek I used to play in as a kid. Then I just started poking around in other places. There's a place called Grant Park, just south of Dayton, Ohio. Went there, and not right next to the elementary school, I found a group of structures and other stonework that was suggestive of primitive, play. And it's along a creek called Holes Creek. So back to the question of rivers and fishing, and I took my eyes off the rivers and into the hills, but really the rivers and streams of our nation. You go on Google Earth, and we're just such a very small vein of humanity throughout, the country. But on Google Earth, there's a lot of green, a lot of open spaces, and they travel along the rivers and streams of those spaces. And you don't have to go very far for wilderness. Fly fishing, you can fish here on Lake St. Clair. I live in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, and we have city parks where I often for walleye and other fish. And you don't have to go very far, not to fly fish, nor to go squatching. My first recordings were picked up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and along the Huron River. And Ann Arbor, if you look around it, it's mainly agriculture and woods and such. And of course, there's the city. But these things are out there, and they'll move up and down the river, and they'll leave some of their evidence, if you will, their wigwams, teepees, that kind of thing. I've heard happy ba and jinjinjawa, just a few expressions I got right out of Ann Arbor.
Wow, that's
incredible.
incredible.
You don't have to go very far. And during the daytime, people are hiking through these areas. If people just would learn what to look for, because most people see these things as, kids have been out here, or, hippies, kids, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, but they also leave a lot of trash when, they build their own. I've come across some hippie homeless shelters, and it's not the most pristine camping grounds. So, but these things are, independent out there. And I've even witnessed one of our artifacts, a teacup, move different places in this one teepee that is in Ann Arbor. And then ultimately, I think I sent you a picture of it. There's a clearing of pine needles on the ground, and it looks like there's some sticks arranged to the left, and the teacup's in the middle of it. But that teacup, I'd see moving here and there, and that was the first suggestion to me that there was a juvenile present. You'd think because they're such huge creations that they're loud, and they can be. They can sound like freaking freight trains, but they also speak in a very furtive way that is practically undetectable to us.
Interesting, because I think I grew up hearing one time a Sasquatch ghost story, if you call it, and I think I was really terrified going out in the woods, ever stepping outside of my family cabin in northern Wisconsin. How do you decide to want to go fishing or go out in the woods?
Well, I love it so much, and I'm not going to let it defeat me. I've been in and out of this valley most of my life, and they have, of course, have been there. They may know me, I don't know, but I've been up and down that river since I was a boy. You can't let it get to you. I think that And I've learned a little since, that really loud video I shared with you. They're barking and yelling in the background. One says Hanzo. Uh, and I have felt that personally. And I think it might be a form of greeting. So when they were there last year, I didn't speak back, even though before I went up there, I told myself I'd like to talk to them, but I was in such a state of shock. And really, there were moments when I thought, that's it for me. I'm never going to go home because it's all very new. And like I said earlier, I felt very small because you're in the midst of such a creation that is immensely powerful, and could have you or not in a second. I mean, but I don't believe they're malevolent. I think they're curious, and they were just out there and grateful that
Yeah.
they let me share their woods with them.
I mean, I think sometimes it's hard to believe that we were ever going to be in a situation that we are right now with COVID. So I don't think it's too far off to think that there's other things that we can believe in, like there's other things out there. So yeah, no, I appreciate you telling me your story and listening about your adventures with Bigfoot. I think that this podcast is also about all the people who love to fly fish and their fishing adventures and their
Yeah.
stories, and also their personal experience of how they feel about being out in the woods. And, your personal experience is one that is very incredible. And, I think I appreciate you sharing it with me.
It was my
Also, on
pleasure.
top of your many adventures and your work with the Michigan Aboriginal Project, I mean, you do have also a great eye for your Stillwater studio
Yeah.
with your fishing photos.
And fishing, I'm a former, let's talk about that. I haven't told this story in a while. So I'm a former squash player, and my knees gave out. I had had surgery on both of them, and I knew I'd eventually have to replace them if I kept up with the game. And that next year was pretty brutal work wise, marriage wise. I was increasingly depressed. I was on opioids for my knee troubles, and not addicted. It's just, it does suppress, it does slowly depress you over time.
Yeah.
And for the long-term pain that I had, it's like, oh God, this, it was that and all sorts of dynamics that were working against me. So put me in a bad place. And so that's when I really hit the river. That's where I discovered the utmost peace and grace in my world. It's just a beautiful place to be. Fly fishing you can do anywhere in it, but I love the small streams. I love the rivers I can wade. And it's like a tonic.
Yeah.
When my marriage was once upon a time stressed during a vacation, ahead of time I said, I just want to go fishing once, maybe twice. So anyway, I remember I getting to the river, and just as I step into it, all my worry, a world of stress just was lifted from my soul. This burden was gone, and I was there to fish, and it was wonderful. So some years passed, and I had that's when the depression kind of was settling in, maybe around that time and some years after, but definitely some years after, and carried on. But went to the river, and I needed a hobby. I picked up the camera. I'd always kind of liked photography. I just took my camera to the river, and every time I held a trout, they are just so beautiful, and they're also very different when you study them. And it's like there's got to be a God. It's like the first time I held and saw my kid, being born.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's got to be a God. I mean, it's a miracle that any one of us is around anyway, given all the things that can go wrong in the gestation process. It's a miracle that we're here, and we have this wonderful playground, and trout fishing, fly fishing. It's like one of the greatest gifts to a boyhood dreamer like myself, who really needed to get away and connect with nature. And that's what I was doing. In my way, it was connecting with God.
It's just about being out in nature and just kind of accepting your place. And you're like, if you're on a small river, you're almost like, wow, I'm here, the only one on this small river in this whole world. Like, there's so many people, billions of people in the world, and I'm the only one on this river. It kind of makes you feel pretty small, but also pretty special that you get to experience something like that. I have to laugh because I asked you for, I was like, oh, send me some of your fishing photos. And on there, you sent me also a photo of Kid Rock. And it seriously has me questioning, Do you have a photo of Kid Rock? He's like walking down the stairs with the,
Yeah.
yeah.
I've had a lot of God wink, despite the horrors of my life. I've had a lot of God winks and blessings, and that was one of them. A friend of mine had bought at charity auction dinner at a local businessman and philanthropist's home. And the dinner was with Kid Rock. I went and photographed the evening, starved to death, and begged for food at the end from the caterers, hors d'oeuvres that weren't fully depleted. But yeah, worked for free, of course. She said, "I can't pay you." I said, "I don't care. I was going to be with a billionaire tycoon and a rock star, and okay, I'm in."
Yeah, and did you just capture that photo as he was like leaving dinner, or
that was right after shots up on the lanai and cigars, and they were on the way down to dinner, and I had taken a position at the back side of the courtyard there, and he pursed his lips to a cigar, and I fired, and it was just one shot, and it was just perfect. Everything fell into place because there are the geraniums above him, and this red pants. Just a really cool, shot.
look at you. You got the unexpected photo of Kid Rock and you got some footage of Bigfoot. I don't think
There
too
you
many
go.
people can say anything like that. So,
No.
yeah, it was just interesting. I was like, wow, he's got all these fish photos, and then there's a photo of Kid Rock with the cigar.
Yeah. Cool. And there's another, if you're interested in colorful stories. Did I send you the snake image?
You didn't, but it was on your studio, which is in the Stillwater Studio website, which is so cool underwater.
Right. Yeah, it is underwater. Actually, it was a juvenile about 5.5 inches long, and he was just frolicking on the surface of the water. It was in early November, and he was sunning himself and playing. It was just awesome. I was there fishing for perch with my dad, and just right off the docks. And I had a new telephoto lens, and I busted it out and took pictures of the snake, and like 5-6 frames, and that one just turned out to be beautiful. And I remember when I fired, I was like, that was it, that was the shot, and it turned out to be the shot. And that image has a little history. Wes Craven was in town, I don't know, 10 years ago or so, shooting Scream 4. And they rented a lot of local artists' work, and that was used in Scream 4 in the subplot called Stab 7, I think. It's a couple of girls on the couch, and one's talking too much, and rightfully gets stabbed in the guts.
Oh, no way!
Beyond that, you can see Frolic, that snake, in the background. So that's kind of like a little feather in my cap.
You're in the right place at the right time, because like you said, and maybe it's because people aren't maybe aware of their outdoor situations, but I think it's always kind of fun to question what's around us, and and also to listen to other people's experiences and stories, and doing it with an open mind and an open heart. Well, if people want to learn more about you and see your artwork, and also maybe learn more about your Michigan Aboriginal project, what's the best way for them to contact you?
I'm on Facebook. I have a YouTube channel, both under my name, James Lady, and under the name of Michigan Aboriginal Project, 2 separate channels. Drop me a note. My contact information is in there if somebody's so motivated. If anybody's actually out there and had a Sasquatch experience, I'd like to hear about it. Stillwater Studio. There's an email address on the Stillwater Studio site that is dead. I just got so much. It became unmanageable. I just forgot about it. So it doesn't exist anymore. And that site that I created is so old. But it still conveys a sense of peace, and I'm still glad I can share that with folks.
I also really appreciate you sharing your story with me, learning more about what you do about the Michigan Aboriginal Project. And I think it's just another way that we can open our eyes to other things that might be possibly around us.
Oh, yeah. And there's more out there. If people are willing to look and investigate a little bit, it's not that hard. There is a lot of silly stuff out there, but if I have one parting word to people, just, be at peace with yourself, just love life. We only have this one go around in this physical plane, and we're meant to enjoy it. I think in a way we're tested every day. And I think The woods can teach you many wonderful lessons. And whatever your Sasquatch is, you should pursue it.
Go to thefebruaryroom.com, where you can access a complete library of our podcast and read more about our guests, their fishing stories, and favorite fly patterns. We're always looking for exceptional fly fishing yarns, and if you have one to spin, shoot us an email at info@thefebruaryroom.com. The February Room is always free, but if you feel like throwing a nickel in the pond, we appreciate any additional listener support. For companies and individuals interested in sponsorship opportunities, please contact us for our media kit. Thanks for stopping by the February Room, and we'll see you down here next week.